Hey guys, welcome back. I am here today with Scott Grotbo. It has been a long time we've been trying to get together. Scott, thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us on.
So, Scott here is a newly retired Air Force veteran after 28 years. Thank you for your service. And when I say that we've been trying to get together to chat for a while, like it is no joke, but fortunately, he and I are both on similar paths where we are really just trying to help the veteran and the veteran family population. But then being a person of service, you can't help but open that up to want to serve other people. And so we chatted a little bit before I pushed record, and I got to hear a little bit about kind of where things are going, but I'm not going to spoil anything. Let's go ahead and get started. And Scott, if you could just share with us a little bit about your journey as far as you want to go back, like maybe what got you into the military, what led you there, any triumphs or struggles that have gotten you to where you are. And oh, well, I guess spoiler, here's one thing I didn't mention, that he owns and operates his own retreat, which I'm sure you'll expand on that retreat center called Moraine View R and R, which is near Bloomington, Illinois, which is central Illinois for anyone who is unaware. All right, Scott, now you take it away. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
All right, absolutely. And just like you kind of laid it out there, I'll start back at the beginning, and just kind of work through that military service and then how it led to this new mission after retirement with the Veterans Retreat. So, you know, growing up in Central Illinois, growing up out in the country here, just southeast of Bloomington, I was always in the outdoors. So as a kid, the outdoors just it was calling my name all the time, and eventually watching enough Hollywood movies that really, growing up with the action movies in the 80s and stuff like that, really portrayed the military in such a way that I wanted that adventure. And so that's where I, kind of took what I saw through the Hollywood lens as well as the outdoors around me and, put it together. And I was already kind of uh, pushing myself towards a military career in that sense. And I knew I wanted to get into the special operations career field at some point. And so I enlisted in 1995 while I was still 17 years old in high school, in my senior year of high school. And right after graduation, pretty much headed off to basic training and then all the schools after that. And I went right into Air Force Special Warfare. So there's a mission set in the Air Force called Tactical Air Control Party. And so it mostly consists of being with the Army. So as much as I wore the Air Force rank and service tapes, I was always with the Army. So I kind of had a toss up there. I want to join the Army. I knew the Air Force life was a little bit different because my brother was already in. So I found this mission, TAC-P, instead of the Special Warfare. And so like anybody, again, wanting to have their cake and eat it too, timing couldn't have been better with, when the Operation Enduring Freedom, the whole global war on terrorism, when that kicked off, I was already at the final stages of my qualification in order to, pretty much be combat mission ready, so CMR. And so when I did that, and no sooner than the events of 9/11 unfolded, I knew I was going to be busy. And so here I was stepping down range by myself and linking up with Operational Detachment Alpha, so the A teams, the Special Forces teams from the US Army. And, at the age of 24, just all the surreal moments that played out in Afghanistan and all the different mission sets, just everything. It was a lot to take in just in that first 6-month deployment, and especially that just the combat portions itself. And so I knew it was already affecting me. So come back, kind of have a little bit of downtime, and then right back in it again. So another follow-on tour in 2003 into Afghanistan. And so what I realized was that as I learned about it later, was that there's enough trauma that happened and the symptoms that result with what PTSD does, that I didn't resolve a lot of the things that happened to me. So the unresolved trauma was just building up and building up. And so over the years, still continuing on with an Air Force career, commissioning, all in the same mission. Um, I was trying to keep all that zip tied and duct tape, and I knew I was just keeping it bottled up. Just put on the mask, just keep going with your career, make it to the end, make it to, the retirement, and then figure out after that if something's still bothering you. Well, I didn't quite make it to retirement. I made it to February of 2020 when suddenly that PTSD, that demon, that pain body had grown enough that it really started to just affect me completely. I couldn't keep the mask on. So everything that just reckless nature, substance abuse stuff, eventually to the point where it's like, hey, friends and family started to notice some things. And then finally, I hit my boiling point, and I had to get busy with self-care. So I knew I was gonna start down that path with the hopelessness and despair that I felt, that it wasn't gonna end up right, become that statistic. And so that decision was very hard, because as much as you don't think that you have what it takes to address a lot of those challenges, especially mental health wise, they'll tell you right away, especially the counselors, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Mm-hmm.
And so right before the pandemic kicked off, I separated from my family, ended up becoming divorced, but I had to get back to I got back to my home, back to the farm I grew up on, which is I live right next to. And I got back to some of those roots. I got back to the place that I was familiar with, the things that I knew could regulate me. Started going to counseling, started into prescription medication, started in just, if it was dealt with self-care, I just got after it, stopped drinking, just all of that, and one counselor really put it best. They said, hey, at what point were you actually going to put your own oxygen mask on and stop putting everybody else's on? Because again, core values, service before self. We're more willing to sacrifice ourselves to the point where we're done,
Right.
as opposed to do any type of selfish act, even if it's in our best interest to take care of ourselves. So that's like kind of one of the messages I always try to convey to a lot of veterans is, hey, at some point you got to put that oxygen mask on. That you are no better off. Your service is no better off to anybody if you yourself can't even fulfill it. So get the self-care, get to the self-care, get it accomplished, start down that path. And so when I started down that path, I came back into the office, came back into my role, which I was a commander at the time. So I was already a lieutenant colonel. I was already a squadron commander. And my leadership, I thought, this is going to go one of two ways. Either I'm going to be shown the door, or maybe they'll kind of look through the stigma and support me. And that's what I got. So first of all, they were very surprised that any of this was affecting me. They just said, you had such a good poker face. We just didn't suspect that anything was wrong. And then I, you know, I just had to tell them a little bit more about what I was feeling, because I didn't realize the emotional triggers that I was having. And so it helped really once they started to understand it, and that they themselves didn't want to further support a stigma. They said, hey, let's get after this. Let's promote you. Let's get you going. Let's get you in the right direction. Show others that you're doing the right things, and get some
Wow.
people out of hiding. So, because now they weren't concerned with me. They said, well, no, you just basically identified your challenges and what you want to do. Now we're worried about everybody else that isn't doing that. So I kind of went on my own little campaign of helping others, while still in the uniform, come to that that idea that, hey, you can still be in the service, and there's ways and there's a means to take care of a lot of these things, especially around PTSD. And the one thing my leadership asked me, he said, Scott, what do you wish you had all those years ago that could have really helped you? And I said, boy, I wish I had a place I could have gone to, because I came back by myself. So when you come back by yourself, one of the first ones to deploy is you're just inundated with all the questions. You don't, and as you know, you come out of that environment where all these surreal events just played out in front of you, and you come back to the chaos of our, our culture, and now you try to figure out how to really just live that life. And so I did. I told them I wish there was someplace I could have gone with the team I was with, because I didn't see them after I left Afghanistan, and
Right.
just decompress, talk through those situations, tried different therapies, the stuff that like we feature now. And so once all those gears were turning, and I was like, well, geez, I've got folks coming off a deployment here pretty soon. They're going to be coming back. I'd love to be able to know that we can offer a place like that for them. And then not just them, but everybody that's out there hurting. We retired, separated, still in service, just starting their career. So that's where I was like, wow, there's enough here in Central Illinois when it comes to work, recreation, and even the restorative therapies like towards self-care, that we can do this here. We can do it in Central Illinois. And so that's when we created Moraine View R R, because we kind of advertise ourselves as a fellowship retreat,
Mm.
meaning if you have an area of expertise that that helps people, licensed counseling, yoga, breath work, we look at different areas of recreational therapy, you know, we bring all that together. That way veterans can experience all that. They can try new things, and that's the biggest thing about our program is we want veterans to come in and have their own unique retreat to help them figure out, hey, what helps you regulate, get connected, kind of get yourself, kind of recalibrated, really,
Mhm.
for that matter. And so that's, everything from the start of that career to continuing the career. Because people tell me, hey, you're retired. I said, actually, I just graduated from the Air Force with a 27-year degree in leadership and, in warfare. And then it's just on to the next mission. You're just going into the next mission to help others to continue to serve, just like you're doing. And so that's what we aim to do at the Veterans Retreat.
Yeah. Exceptional. So what like year was it, 2020 or 2021 when you opened it?
Well, so we opened we established in November 2020 is when we got the official 501c3 paperwork from the IRS. So we are a nonprofit, national nonprofit, because we want to make sure any veteran coming to the retreat they're doing it at no cost to them. So we figure out through like veteran sponsorship and different fundraising
Yeah.
venues and ways to get that accomplished. And so that way they're able to do that. And then we were first set up, I'm actually sitting in what was our first location where we were going to do a retreat. It was near Leroy, Illinois, right next to Moraine View State Park. But then a curveball was thrown our way. So we didn't realize our neighbors in the area next door and within our area weren't too keen on having veterans with any mental health challenges at our location. So yeah, the scenarios they painted, they sent me a questionnaire. They all basically petitioned in a way to, that they didn't want to see this come to fruition here. So great idea, just not in our backyard. And so now I had to have concern about the safety and security of the veterans that came to the retreat. So even before we were able to launch our first retreat at the original location, we were already had our challenge of should we even do it here? So we did find a new place that's near Saybrook, so just a little bit further east of the Moraine View State Park area, and sits on 25 acres, just isolated, just beautiful. And that one is, we've been running retreats out of there ever since really the summer of 2023. And then we did the official ribbon cutting in October of 22. So in summer of 2022, official ribbon cutting in October of 2022. And then we've been running one retreat every month. And what we try to do is everything from men's retreats, women's retreats, couples. We just did one that was like co-ed, where the men would also come in the same day as the women were staying there. And then, we've been doing it as a 3-day retreat right now, 3-day retreats, because it's just that amount of time for people to take off to be able to attend is what's kind of a key factor right now. But we'd love to do longer retreats. Our ideal would be a 5-day, 4-night here at the retreat center. Yeah, and then the next step, the venture is going to take us to hopefully moving in August to a 40-acre horse farm that, again, we'll be able to do so much of our programs and services on site there. Right now we go off site for our equine therapy to a horse farm near Rantoul, east of Rantoul, north of Champaign there. But now with the horse farm itself, being able to bring everything together that we kind of want to feature at one
Yeah,
location. So we're
that's
excited about that, and hopefully that comes to fruition.
yeah, that is incredible. And I just got to experience equine therapy in the last year and a half, having stepped into becoming a team leader with what used to be Lone Survivor Foundation, but is now Operation
Mm,
Red Wing Foundation. I attended as
okay.
a veteran a year ago in November, and then and they hadn't had equine therapy then. But then when I became a team leader, I my first first cycle that I team led was at their Texas location, and that was the first time that I got to be a part of equine therapy, which is pretty sensational. Especially I had come with a little bit of not trauma, like I'm super dramatic when I say trauma, because as a kid at Girl
Yeah.
Scout camp, I had a situation with a horse, and so like I was so scared of them since then. So the minute that they told me like this was going to be a part of the plan, I was like, oh boy, like I don't know about that, but
Yeah.
to learn how they are nonverbal animals that like read and feel your vibe and energy is pretty cool. So congratulations. That's
Thank you.
incredible. And it's pretty amazing. We didn't get to dive into it right before the call, but when I had mentioned about like that I felt like I would have always been a lifer in the military, but then after I returned from a deployment going through my own stuff, it changed for me, and I felt like the things that I was holding
Mhm.
on to in the military, like that I couldn't have them back anymore, that like this moment, this time, this place, this year, like having,
Yeah,
if I would have had a place to come back and decompress, maybe I wouldn't have left feeling like I had lost my identity. And so I really love the mission of having a place where people can come and decompress and sort out those different thoughts and find a way to cope and not even cope is the word, well yeah, cope in all things that we do, but when it comes to those like stigmas, like we were talking about the neighbors
yeah,
even having a petition, like we have that in so many places. And so like being able to respond or not respond to it appropriately rather than reacting, but that's why we're on this mission, to enlighten people and to help those.
exactly right.
Yeah, so that's pretty sensational. You mentioned that like you had learned to identify your emotional triggers. Do you feel like that it was counseling and really just the whole picture of self-care and personal growth through that whole journey was what do you feel like it was just counseling that helped you to identify those emotional triggers?
Well, it was everything. So it's a lot of the different therapies, but then counseling was definitely, even in my own testimony that I wrote to family and friends, I just told them, that the priority was the counseling, because it wasn't just being able to do like cognitive behavior therapy, talk therapy. It was I went through sessions of what's EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So I was able to work through scenarios and significant events and traumatic events from start to finish. And really, so you're doing is you're taking a memory caught in the fight or flight response mode and kind of reprogramming it into a better memory that's, again, just kind of stored away differently when you're not in fight or flight. Because I didn't
Right.
realize, so it was that emotional trigger gets you back into fight or flight. Well, I never came out of fight or flight. So until I realized what it meant to come out of that, and you kind of just see things differently, and you kind of feel and experience things differently, and even your thought patterns, it's just like, wow, what, and I realized they were able to, the counselors that I'd worked with that were certified in EMDR were able to do that. And it wasn't just combat. You go back to anything in your childhood that upset you, that was a significant event that further, it's like, hey, if there's a triggering moment and you feel like you're your 10-year-old self again, what happened? What happened to you? And so
Right.
we did that. We worked through those. So, to say, depending on how you are conditioned, even before you enter the military, you might already be harboring some unresolved trauma that's only going to get worse as you fulfill a military career that's going to expose you to more trauma.
Yeah.
So cleaning up a lot of that is what I really did. And yes, the counseling was, that was what really helped me understand how the brain works, how we capture memories, what all those symptoms really are clues about as they relate to PTSD, and then how to get past it all. And so I've heard a lot of some folks, the EMDR didn't work for them. For me, it did work. And then you figure out from there also, okay, what other therapies? Let's try things, to
Mm,
see if it, kind of, it opens up your mind a little bit more. And I really found that like in things like breath work and yoga. So
yeah.
yeah.
Uh, I have not done EMDR, but it sure, I've heard a lot about it from other people. It sure sounds a lot like ART. Have you heard of that?
No,
It's
can you
like
tell me what that is?
accelerated resolution therapy, but it's also
Oh yeah.
it's the reprogramming of situations, but it uses like rapid eye movement. But I wanted to bring attention to that and what you said, and that is just what I really hope people will listening to this or watching this today, if they can relate to that, like that right there, whether you're a veteran or a non-veteran, like knowing that we can reprogram the way our
Hmm.
thoughts and the way things are shaped in our head. And if you do have trauma and you haven't not piled, but you haven't stored that memory away in the right place, um, then yes, it's not going to be able to heal or deal with it. And so learning about the brain research, as you have mentioned some of it here, has really helped me a lot in understanding
Hmm.
like that like we have more control over um those addictions, the feelings like than we think we do. And before this call you had mentioned, as we were talking about some of our mutual connections, Jeff Omar, who is the father of a kid I went to high school with, he had reached out to me following reading my book. And when we were having a conversation one time, he said something that stuck with me that I have repeated to many people when we have conversations like this that I know you could relate to. As we were talking about things such as addiction or alcohol addiction.
Hmm.
And we were also talking about scripture and God's word. And he had said, Jennifer, like you and I both know it's not the drinking that is the problem, it's the thinking. And
Hmm.
that just always sat with me. And I was like, absolutely. Like if we're not thinking right or putting the thoughts away in the correct spots or, you know, changing them, it's the problem and not your
Hmm.
go-to's of whatever idols or coping mechanisms you use. So that always really sat with me. Oh, and I just remembered something I was going to say, but I must have got off on a tangent. It's pretty sensational that around the time of the pandemic is when, I shouldn't say sensational, I should say ironic, around the time of the
Yeah.
pandemics kicking off and you getting to this place where it was a huge turning point. That is also a huge turning point for me as well, right there at the beginning of the pandemic. Like that's
Mhm.
where I had like a traumatic brain injury. And then from there, I found myself in like coping bad and having not like good thoughts and like, and then realizing like that I was the problem and I needed to do something about it. And so about May 2020 was when I put on my big girl panties and stopped throwing myself a pity party. And so I around the same time is when like we started to get it together. So I find that ironic and pretty exceptional. So for people that want to know more about Moraine View R and what to expect when they come there, because I know people have been to different ones and everything offers something different. So like
Mhm.
what kinds of things would they, when you said you kind of shape it to, because everyone, it's not one size fits all, like everyone's different. Does everyone run on the same schedule, do the exact same things? Like what does it look like? What kinds of healing and growth post-traumatic things do you have in place there?
Yeah, so I'll kind of take you through a typical retreat experience. So it starts with knowing that, by the way, you're probably one of 4 people attending. So we like to keep it a small group, intimate. I did a clinic with the Elk Institute, Dr. Carrie Elk. She hosted a clinic for 5 of us, special operators down in Georgia at a resort, and it was great, because even at 5 of us, not that she anticipated that we were all going to come together and kind of do group therapy, but that's just how our personalities worked out. And so by being in that smaller, intimate setting, it helped to become vulnerable, drop some of the insecurities and things like that. So I like that, and that's what we wanted to be able to do at our retreats is, hey, let's keep it small, because one of the things that we want to be able to bring in at the discretion of the veterans is counselors as well. So we can do group therapy, we can do individual counseling if that's desired. So when they, so again, signing up means, hey, you're going to be part of a small group. Now, if the person says, "Hey, I'd like it for to be myself and these teammates of mine," that'd be awesome. I'd love to know that the groups are coming out there, they all know each other,
Mm.
and kind of work through some of the same challenges together. But if it's for strangers, that's fine too. So we'll kind of orchestrate things so that way nobody ever feels like, hey, you either have to participate or go off on your own and do your own thing. But we never want anybody to feel like they're left out of anything. So what we do is we identify up front through a questionnaire, hey, what areas do you like? What, if it came to recreation, is it fishing? Is it horseback riding? Is it kayaking, canoeing? Is what, golf? So here's the recreation. And then we also highlight restorative therapies, things like mindfulness meditation, yoga, breath work, music therapy, art therapy, aqua stuff. So we already get that idea from everybody coming in. Okay, this is something they'd like to experience or something they'd like to do again that they used to do. And then we kind of work with the folks that we bring in to cater to those, because, I'm not certified in everything by any means, but we know a lot of folks in the area that can bring that expertise to us. And so
Mhm.
we gauge based on that response, that feedback. Hey, there's a really good time for everybody to come together, and we do breath work together. Massage therapy. So of course, massage is its own one-on-one thing. So we just schedule massages throughout the course of a retreat, for everybody to be able to participate. And then of course, weather. We look at the weather and we say, hey, today would be a beautiful day to get outside. Let's go do whatever it is. If we're gonna take a few of them out fishing, or we're just gonna walk the trails there. So it's just a balancing act, but there is never a strict schedule. The only thing that we kind of kept rather strict is just coming when they get there and going through orientation together, and just kind of that initial um, briefings and things like that, get everybody situated. And then the equine therapy, because it's off site, they have a specific time at their location that they that they work with veterans. So we have to honor that. And then, in between all that, so because somebody could come in like myself. I know what regulates me. I know I like to be outside cutting wood, splitting wood. Then I want to come in and do my 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. I want to listen to certain music. I love doing yoga. And then I know what I like to read. So we
Mhm.
have plenty of books. So you can find that nook that you like to be in to just go read. And then, so those are like all the programs. And then the education I lay in there. So as much as I provide some of my testimony, I find out when to do that. Sometimes we do it on the first day. Some days I'm like, hey, this is probably a good time to let's just talk about mental health. And so there's like some YouTube series out there that we'll just watch on how to rewire your brain. So it's we flex in such a way that it's like, hey, let's do this right now. I think you'll think you'll enjoy this. And even if it's something that nobody wants to sit in on, I at least give them the cliff notes about what it
Yeah.
is that I've come to understand. You look at physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual domains,
Excuse-
and everybody has a way about how they live in those domains. And so at least I can get information to them, and that way they can either take that information, take what we've been reading, and take it with them when they leave, or they can dive into it a little bit more while they're there. So I hope that kind of answered the question about that experience. I mean, it really is as flexible as our nature is in the
Mhm.
military to accomplish the mission. We do the same thing through the aspect of the retreat.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really good idea that you offer the information, even if they don't want to do it while they're there, because
Yeah.
we're we're all like, we will get to that point at different times. And so, something, a tool sitting around your house that you
Yes.
don't touch for 6 months, you may suddenly cross paths with it 6 months later and actually pick it up and actually open your ears to what it has to say.
Yeah.
So that's that's a really good idea. Are you on site, like helping lead these each month?
Yes. So myself and we have two other staff members. Noelle Reedy, she's our development director. She's also my girlfriend, and has been just an amazing, key figure in a lot of what we're accomplishing through the programs. And between her and I, we have such amazing conversations about our mental health and then talking about PTSD and how we can continue to help others. And so we are kind of the key staff on site to guide people through retreats because it's about getting people comfortable,
Mm.
and not just comfortable with themselves, comfortable around others, comfortable at the location. Because I always wanted to make sure, hey, it's like an Airbnb. You go in there, it's not your place, but you want to you want to treat it, you want to get comfortable, and that's how like we want to be able to make sure folks are doing the
Absolutely.
same thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that is exceptional. So, you kind of already have mentioned it, but if there's anything you want to add to it, I like to always ask people, like, what you do for your own self-care, as I know, like,
Hmm.
our post-traumatic growth continues on for a lifetime, but as you invest so much in other people, we can't help but it takes from our cup, and so you
Yeah.
mentioned yoga and reading and things of that sort, but how are you intentional with your self-care to make sure you always keep your mask on so that you can help other people?
Yeah, that's hard because just like how we are trained and how we are pretty much programmed to kind of uh, run with a mission is we want to get the mission accomplished, even if it sacrifices ourselves. And so that's where even when I bring folks into a retreat, one of the
Mm.
first things I have this big dry erase board, and it says at the very top, my marathon. And I tell people right away, I said, hey, I'm still running my own race. I can be a little bit of a coach and a cheerleader for you, but more importantly, I can pace you. So if you want to run with me, run with me. I can show you the pace I'm going at, because it's true. My own self care is still just as important as everybody else coming in there. And especially because, we don't want to be the hypocrites, hey, do as I say, not as I do. Because again, it's just, come on, what are we doing? We're not portraying what we are trying to accomplish here.
Right.
So I find time, usually in the mornings is when I do my yoga. And then we always make sure we find that time, Noelle and I, to take care of ourselves. And, the biggest thing is when I go out to the retreat, and if anybody's there or not, it doesn't matter. I'm there having my own retreat daily if necessary. So as much as, you know, to wear a mask still, I shouldn't have to. I'd rather be more vulnerable and just say, hey, I am so glad you're here. I still need this place as much as you do. So let's just keep doing this. Let's do it together. And then, and that's how I kind of push myself to stay intentional with the things that I know I need to do. I still go to counseling. So I still do counseling. Usually I was doing it every week. Now I go every other week. And so, it just, as I start to get a little bit overwhelmed, which we all do in this line of work, it's just always having somebody that is willing to tell you, hey, start, look, you got to look and the other way and start thinking about your own path and what you're going to do. And then just being able to kind of self-critique too,
Yeah.
because again, it's like after every time I present something, I'm like, is that the truth? Is that really what I'm doing when I tell people, hey, you need to get better sleep, you need to watch your caffeine intake, you need to do this, and this, as I look down at a 4 o'clock cup of coffee, 4 p.m.
Yeah.
cup of coffee, and it's like, well, so much for cutting that off by noon.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Self-reflection is a very great tool that helped me, but also I'm sure helps other people with personal growth, that self-reflection piece. Well,
yes,
oh, there was before I let you go. Oh, I'm gonna put in the show notes for those of you that are tuned in and want to click on it, but for people who are riding along and don't have the show notes in front of them, how can they get more information? You want to put your website out there, or whatever Twitter snap handle. That's what my husband always says, Twitter snap, whatever you want to
yep.
put out there for as how can people hunt down more information if they do not go to the show notes and click on the links that I provide?
Actually, yeah, because one of the things that we have is our coverage, our media coverage is quite extensive. So, from our website, moraineviewretreat.org,
Mhm.
to our Facebook, so just Moraine View R R via Facebook, as well as we have Instagram. We do have some pamphlets and information that we usually leave at VA locations and other veteran service organizations. So sometimes if there's any cork boards or stuff like that, we like to leave our business cards or information published. And
Yeah.
especially we're going to need to get out to the VAs here. We have the VA locally in Bloomington, I know Danville, Peoria, all the way up at Hines north of us. So just anywhere that a veteran would probably find themselves going to, as far as government or agencies, hopefully have our information there as well, so they'll see it. But it's easy. Google searches kind of get you access to everything that information-wise that you need to know. And then what we like to be able to do is, just email us. So moraineviewretreat@gmail.com right now is what we're using. We're going to end up migrating here in the near future over to another platform, but contact us. And then, that's how we work through referrals right now, as well as just open, anybody kind of not application wise, but inquiries. So any inquiries, and then we'll see if it's a good fit to come out to a retreat. And then if it's just for the sake of doing a open house, like a site visit, absolutely.
Mhm.
We love doing kind of the field trip, the site visits to anybody interested, and call it your 2-hour retreat. You're out here, you're already experiencing the place, short of anything else that we're doing. And we absolutely love to be able to show our retreat center.
That's awesome. My sister-in-law lives in Bloomington. I hope that I can get a hold of you and come check it out. Maybe make a little something to be able to show people that, I might be
Yeah.
able to share it with, and people on a non-for-profit that I'm with as well. But Scott, we finally did it. We were able to finally connect and get together so we can put
Yes.
your mission out there. Congratulations on expanding and starting to hope, pray that your horse equine therapy, continues on. And your guys' mission is inspiring, and it's inspiring for me, and I hope it is for other people on here. I'm sure it is. So thanks again for coming on today.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for this platform. This is awesome. These are key to getting the message out to
I
the
agree.
network, to helping people realize, hey, there's no lonely islands out there. There really aren't. As much as we would tend to put ourselves out there. This is, doing what you do through these podcasts and everything like that is just incredible. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Scott.